Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector here, and I'm doing a little bit of retro gaming this morning. In fact, I have some new Nintendo games that are supposed to be coming in today. So I wanted to kind of have my NES set up so that when those games came in, I'd be able to test and play them right away. But outside of those games, last night I spent a little time playing Super Punch Out, along with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Manhattan Project on the NES. There's definitely something super nostalgic about playing these cartridges on their original hardware. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. And one of the things that I started thinking about overnight was what is propping up these retro game prices? Like, why is it that we are officially 5 years removed from the start of the lockdowns, yet retro game prices haven't really crashed the way a lot of people thought they would? Um, I remember since around 2022 or 2023, a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, wait, the retro games are gonna, crash." Or I'm waiting for prices to crash so I can start building a collection. And yet here we are today, and most games have probably, on average, games may have moved 15 to 20% off of their highs, depending on the game. Obviously, you have outliers, but I would say overall, retro game prices have come down, but they've come down marginally. We haven't seen this crazy crash that would have opened the floodgates for everyone to now jump in and start buying retro games. And you know, one of the things that had me thinking about retro game prices is the sneaker market. I'm very much a sneakerhead as well. I do collect sneakers. And one of the things that I saw, especially last year, was there was a massive bottoming out of uh, sneaker prices on the resale market. You had a lot of sneakers that were sitting on shelves in stores, whereas before, during 2020, almost everything was flying off the shelf and everything was reselling for double the price. Last year, you really saw a crash in the sneaker market where sneakers were reselling for less than half of their retail value, where the majority of sneakers that would have quickly flew off shelves were now ending up in outlet stores and in places where people were getting 50, 60, 70% off of some of these same sneakers that were really expensive just a couple years ago. And I think the difference as I look at both markets, right? Like the retro game market and the retro sneaker market, when I look at the two and I kind of analyze what the biggest difference is, the biggest difference between the two was that when it came to the sneaker market, there was a massive overproduction that wasn't in line with the demand. There were way more sneakers being made than people who actually wanted those sneakers, and because of that, people just stopped caring. It's weird how that psychology works, but all of a sudden there wasn't really anything special about having certain sneakers anymore because they were just easily attainable, easily accessible, and no one was really doing anything extra to try and get them. Whereas with video games or with retro games specifically, we're not getting any more copies of well, we're not getting any more copies of Mike Tyson's Punch Out being made, right? Like there aren't any more original cartridges of this game being made. So whatever's left out there is all that there is out there. And the supply of retro games that are out there has to meet the demand. So with the sneaker market, you had two things that were changing. You had the supply that was changing and the demand that was changing. Whereas with retro games, the only thing that's changed is the demand, not necessarily the supply. And you know, I don't know if the 15 to 20% indicates that the demand for retro games has gone down per se, meaning that no one wants them, or if it's more so a reflection of people just not being able to afford them anymore. And What does that mean in the future? Does that mean that we'll never see a crash because we're never going to get to a place where, w- more retro games are never going to be made? No one's going to turn around and start making, you know, games for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. I mean, outside of those companies that do those one-offs, those home brews and things like that. But what I mean is you're never going to see a mass production of retro games again. And I think it's because of that. That's the biggest reason why prices are still where they're at, and why they're going to stay where they're at for the most part, and if anything, go up really as we start to see the remaining uh, inventory dwindle away, whether it be because of damage, loss, games just no longer working, just malfunctions, whatever the case may be. As we start to lose more and more of these physical games, I think the demand is going to start to overtake the supply. And that's when you're going to start to see prices pretty much rise again. I don't want to say that people are used to these prices now, but it's been about 4 years that we've had these retro game prices. And I think that for those who collect and those who are engaged in the hobby, I almost want to say we're kind of used to it now. I don't think anyone is going outside looking for certain retro games expecting them to be 25 cents or $1. Like, no one's expecting to go into any store, whether it be a mom and pop, a major retailer, whatever. No one's expecting to go into any of these stores and see a bin of dollar retro games that are good games. Most retro games are going to cost you $5, $10, $20, $30. As the game starts to increase in, quality and things like that, of course the price is going to increase. But I don't think anyone in 2025 is expecting to pay 25 cents, $1 for retro games. I think the standard has been kind of set, and it's been set universally, right? Like, it's been set not only across mom and pop shops, but it's been set at yard sales, it's been set at flea markets, it's been set at thrift stores. There's really nowhere that you can go anymore in 2025 and pay pennies on the dollar for retro games. Most companies, most individuals, everyone knows for the most part that there's value to these things, and it's become very commonplace and very easy for people to just start looking these prices up and price this stuff accordingly. And the market, I think, has set itself right now. The only thing that I think is left to happen at this point is for there to be another spike. Now, I don't know what's going to trigger that. I wouldn't want to see something like that happen, obviously. I definitely wouldn't want to see a repeat of what we saw in 2020, where $20 games are now $60 and $60 games are now $180. No one's asking for that, but the only place that these things, in some cases, the only direction for them to go is up, especially as, certain games become more and more scarce. But I'm interested to know your thoughts. What do you think is propping up retro game prices in 2025? Why do you think that certain retro games have not really come down a lot off of their 2020 highs? What do you think are some of the major factors? Let me know down in the comments. I think this is a interesting topic to discuss, especially with it being the first Monday of March. It's crazy, but we're almost done with the first quarter of 2025. Isn't that wild? Like, I feel like the year just started and we're almost all the way through the first quarter. By the time we end March, we're going to be in April, and it's going to be game hunting season again. It's going to be yard sale season. It's going to be flea market season. And I think it's going to be good for new collectors and new video game hunters to kind of have a good idea of what to expect out in the market. So let me know your thoughts on this, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.